Most lives are not destroyed by lack of talent. They are destroyed by one uncontrolled moment. One impulse, one reaction, one emotional decision made too fast. This audiobook is not about motivation. It is about command. Command over your impulses. Command over your emotions. Command over the moments that decide your future. If you cannot pause, you cannot choose. If you cannot choose, you are not in control. By the end of this audiobook, you will stop reacting automatically and start operating deliberately, calm, precise, and unprovoked. Because the person who controls their impulses controls the outcome. Chapter 1. Your impulses are not harmless. Impulses feel natural. They feel justified. They feel human. And that is exactly why they are dangerous. Most people don't ruin their lives slowly. They ruin them suddenly. In a moment they didn't control. In a reaction they didn't question. You have a choice. But impulses are designed to make you forget that. An impulse is a demand for immediate relief, immediate expression, immediate action. It says, do it now, say it now, react now. And the problem is not that you feel the impulse. That's human. The problem is that you obey it. That's the key. Every time you obey an impulse, you train it. You strengthen the habit of reaction. You reinforce the pattern of short-term comfort over long-term control. And make no mistake, what feels good now often costs you later. Let's get specific. Careers are not destroyed by incompetence. They are destroyed by one email sent too fast, one meeting where emotions took over, one moment where ego spoke louder than judgment. Someone criticizes you, you feel disrespected. You respond immediately, defensive, emotional, sharp. You feel relief for 5 seconds. You feel powerful for a moment. And then the cost arrives. Trust erodes. Reputation shifts. Opportunities quietly disappear. You didn't lose because you were wrong. You lost because you reacted. It's not about intelligence. It's about impulse control. You have a choice. Relationships end the same way. Not because of lack of love. Not because of lack of effort. But because of unfiltered reactions. One impulsive accusation. One emotional outburst. One message sent while angry. You wanted to feel understood. You wanted to release pressure. Instead, you created damage. Words cannot be recalled. Tone cannot be undone. Perception cannot be erased. What feels good now often costs you later. That's not a metaphor. That's a law. Your reputation works the same way. People are not watching your intentions. They are watching your behavior under pressure. Anyone can stay calm when things are easy. Impulse reveals itself when you're stressed, challenged, or provoked. And here's the uncomfortable truth. The moment you lose control, someone else gains it. You don't need their permission to stay disciplined. You don't need their approval to pause. You have a choice. Most people believe impulses are harmless because they feel small. It's just one comment. It's just one reaction. It's just how I felt in the moment. That's the lie. Impulses are not isolated events. They are signals, and signals shape identity. If you react impulsively often enough, people label you. Emotional, unstable, unpredictable. And once that label forms, it doesn't matter how talented you are. Control is credibility. Restraint is respect. That's the key. Impulses operate on a simple illusion: urgency. They make everything feel immediate, necessary, unavoidable. But urgency is almost always artificial. You think you must respond now. You think silence means weakness. You think restraint means suppression. It doesn't. Restraint means command. It's not about denying emotion. It's about delaying action. You can feel anger without expressing it. You can feel frustration without broadcasting it. You can feel the impulse and still choose discipline. You have a choice. Here's the pattern you must recognize.
Impulse promises relief.
Discipline delivers results. Impulse says, react so you can feel better. Discipline says, pause so you can stay in control. One feels good immediately. The other compounds power over time. What feels good now often costs you later. Say it again. Because repetition builds awareness. What feels good now often costs you later. High-level performers understand this instinctively. They don't rush to respond. They don't explain themselves emotionally. They don't discharge feelings in public. They wait. They observe. They let the impulse pass. Because impulses are temporary, but consequences are permanent. That's the key. Now let's talk behavior. From this moment forward, you stop treating impulses as commands. You treat them as signals. A signal to slow down. A signal to pause. A signal to regain control. When you feel the urge to react, do nothing for 10 seconds. That pause is not weakness. That pause is power. In those 10 seconds, ask yourself one question. What does this cost me later? Not what it feels like now. Not how justified it seems. What does it cost me later? You don't need their permission to pause. You don't need their validation to stay silent. You have a choice. Understand this clearly. The goal is not to become emotionless. The goal is to become unreactive. Emotion is human. Impulse obedience is optional. It's not about suppression. It's about discipline. And discipline always looks boring in the moment until you see the results. That's the key. Most people never connect their current problems to past impulses. They don't remember the reaction that closed the door. They don't remember the message that shifted perception. They don't remember the moment they chose relief over restraint. But the pattern remembers. Life remembers. And now so do you. What feels good now often costs you later. This chapter is not about guilt. It's about awareness. Once you see impulses for what they are, you stop being controlled by them. And once you stop reacting automatically, you start operating deliberately. You've identified the threat. Now it's time to expose why reactions reveal weakness. You understand impulses. Next, you must understand how reacting gives away power. Chapter 2. Reaction is weakness disguised as honesty. Most people think reacting quickly is a virtue. They call it honesty. They call it authenticity. They call it being real. It's not. It's exposure. Reaction is weakness wearing the mask of truth. That's the key. When you react emotionally, you are not expressing strength. You are revealing leverage points. You are telling the world exactly where to press. You have a choice. But reaction removes that choice. Let's dismantle the lie first. You've heard it before. I'm just being honest. That's just how I feel. I don't hide my emotions. Sounds strong. Sounds confident. In reality, it's uncontrolled. Honesty without discipline is not strength. It's leakage. Every unfiltered reaction is information. And information is power for whoever receives it. That's the key. Watch what happens in real life. Someone criticizes you, questions you, challenges you publicly. You react immediately. Your tone sharpens. Your body tightens. Your words speed up. You think you're defending yourself. But what others see is different. They see agitation. They see insecurity. They see loss of composure. And once composure is gone, authority follows. You don't need their permission to stay calm. You don't need their approval to pause. You have a choice. High-control individuals understand something most people don't. The first person to react loses leverage. Why? Because reaction puts you in response mode. You're no longer choosing direction. You're following stimulus. You're playing their game, on their timing, under their frame. That's not power. That's submission. It's not about courage. It's about control. Think about negotiations. The calm person wins. The emotional person concedes. Think about arguments. The person who speaks less reveals less. The person who reacts reveals everything. Think about leadership. No one trusts a leader who explodes. No one follows instability. Reaction disqualifies you quietly. That's the key. Most reactions come from ego. The need to explain. The need to defend. The need to correct immediately. You feel misunderstood, so you rush to fix perception. But here's the truth most people never accept. You don't control perception through reaction. You control it through consistency. Explaining emotionally makes you look guilty, even when you're not. Defending impulsively makes you look weak, even when you're right. You have a choice. Let's talk about anger. Anger feels powerful. It feels assertive. It feels dominant. But anger is usually a signal of lost control, not gained control. When you raise your voice, you lower your position. Once you see impulses for what they are, you stop being controlled by them. And once you stop reacting automatically, you start operating deliberately. You've identified the threat. Now it's time to expose why reactions reveal weakness. You understand impulses. Next, you must understand how reacting gives away power. Chapter 2. Reaction is weakness disguised as honesty. Most people think reacting quickly is a virtue. They call it honesty. They call it authenticity. They call it being real. It's not. It's exposure. Reaction is weakness wearing the mask of truth. That's the key. When you react emotionally, you are not expressing strength. You are revealing leverage points. You are telling the world exactly where to press. You have a choice. But reaction removes that choice. Let's dismantle the lie first. You've heard it before. I'm just being honest. That's just how I feel. I don't hide my emotions. Sounds strong. Sounds confident. In reality, it's uncontrolled. Honesty without discipline is not strength. It's leakage. Every unfiltered reaction is information. And information is power for whoever receives it. That's the key. Watch what happens in real life. Someone criticizes you, questions you, challenges you publicly. You react immediately. Your tone sharpens. Your body tightens. Your words speed up. You think you're defending yourself, but what others see is different. They see agitation. They see insecurity. They see loss of composure. And once composure is gone, authority follows. You don't need their permission to stay calm. You don't need their approval to pause. You have a choice. High-control individuals understand something most people don't. The first person to react loses leverage. Why? Because reaction puts you in response mode. You're no longer choosing direction. You're following stimulus. You're playing their game, on their timing, under their frame. That's not power. That's submission. It's not about courage. It's about control. Think about negotiations. The calm person wins. The emotional person concedes. Think about arguments. The person who speaks less reveals less. The person who reacts reveals everything. Think about leadership. No one trusts a leader who explodes. No one follows instability. Reaction disqualifies you quietly. That's the key. Most reactions come from ego. The need to explain. The need to defend. The need to correct immediately. You feel misunderstood, so you rush to fix perception. But here's the truth most people never accept. You don't control perception through reaction. You control it through consistency. Explaining emotionally makes you look guilty, even when you're not. Defending impulsively makes you look weak, even when you're right. You have a choice. Let's talk about anger. Anger feels powerful. It feels assertive. It feels dominant. But anger is usually a signal of lost control, not gained control. When you raise your voice, you lower your position. When you lash out, you expose your triggers. And triggers are buttons others can press. What angers you controls you. Say it again. What angers you controls you. That's the key. Reaction is predictable, and predictability is dangerous. If people know how you react, they know how to influence you. If they know what provokes you, they know how to destabilize you. Calm people are hard to manipulate. Reactive people are easy to steer. You don't need their permission to be unpredictable. You don't need their validation to stay neutral. You have a choice. Now let's talk about silence. Silence is misunderstood. People think silence means you lost. They think silence means you don't have an answer. Wrong. Silence means you're choosing not to reveal it. Silence keeps information inside. Reaction spills it out. Silence forces others to fill the gap. Reaction fills it for them, often poorly. That's the key. Here's a hard truth. Most people react because they fear judgment. They fear being misunderstood. They fear losing status. So they rush to explain. They rush to justify. They rush to correct. But high-status individuals don't rush. They let time work. They let consistency speak. They let results answer. It's not about being liked. It's about being respected. And respect is built through restraint. Behavioral instruction. Pay attention. The next time you feel the urge to react, do this. Stop talking. Physically slow your breathing. Relax your jaw. Lower your shoulders. That physical reset interrupts the reaction loop. Then ask yourself one question. What happens if I say nothing? Not forever. Just for now. In most cases, silence costs you nothing. Reaction costs you leverage. You have a choice. Reaction feels urgent. Control feels slow. That's why most people choose reaction. But speed is not power. Precision is. You don't win by being fast. You win by being deliberate. It's not about expressing everything you feel. It's about choosing what serves you. That's the key. Over time, something shifts. People stop provoking you because they get nothing from it. People stop testing you because you don't give emotional feedback. Your calm becomes a boundary. And boundaries create authority. What you don't react to defines your strength. Remember that. This chapter taught you a critical distinction. Honesty without control is weakness. Reaction without restraint is exposure. You don't need to react to prove anything. You don't need to explain to maintain power. You have a choice. You've seen how reaction gives away leverage. Now it's time to understand the foundation beneath all control. Because without the ability to pause, nothing else matters. Chapter 3. If you cannot pause, you are not free. Freedom is not doing whatever you feel. Freedom is choosing when to act. Most people confuse impulse with autonomy. They think reacting instantly means they are in control. It doesn't. It means they are predictable. That's the key. If you cannot pause between feeling and action, you are not choosing. You are obeying. You have a choice. But only if you create space. Every moment of your life follows the same structure. Something happens. You feel something. You act. Most people skip the middle. They go straight from feeling to action. No pause. No filter. No control. That missing space is where freedom lives. And when it's missing, so is your power. Look closely at people who feel trapped in life. They feel trapped in jobs, trapped in relationships, trapped in habits. But they are not trapped by circumstances. They are trapped by reflexes. They react the same way every time. They speak before thinking. They act before choosing. The pattern repeats. The outcome repeats. That's not bad luck. That's lack of pause. The pause is uncomfortable. That's why most people avoid it. In the pause, you feel tension, uncertainty, pressure. The impulse screams, "Resolve this now." Say something. Do something. But the pause asks for restraint. And restraint feels like weakness until you understand what it creates. Control. That's the key. High-level operators live in the pause. They do not rush to respond. They do not rush to decide. They do not rush to explain. They allow discomfort to exist without acting on it. And because of that, they see clearly. While others are emotional, they are observant. While others are reactive, they are strategic. You have a choice. Let's talk about pressure. Pressure is not the enemy. Speed is. Pressure reveals whether you can pause. Anyone can pause when there's no urgency. Freedom is pausing when everything feels urgent. Emails, messages, deadlines, confrontations. Life constantly demands immediate response. But urgency is a tactic, not a law. Most things do not need an immediate answer. They just feel like they do. That's the key. When you pause, 3 things happen automatically. First, emotion loses intensity. Feelings peak fast and fade fast if you don't feed them. Second, perspective expands. You see options you couldn't see while reacting. Third, leverage shifts. The person who waits controls the pace. That's not theory. That's observable reality. Most people fear pausing because they fear losing control. In truth, pausing is how you take control back. Silence is not surrender. Delay is not indecision. Delay is dominance when it's intentional. You don't need their permission to pause. You don't need their approval to take time. You have a choice. Now let's break the biggest misconception. Pausing does not mean inaction forever. It means choosing the right moment. The disciplined person acts less often, but more effectively. They don't swing at everything. They don't answer everything. They don't react to everything. They conserve energy. They conserve credibility. They conserve power. That's the key. Here's the truth most people resist. If someone can rush you, they can control you. If someone can provoke you, they can steer you. The pause breaks that control. When you don't respond immediately, you force others to wait. And the person who waits is no longer leading. You are. Behavioral instruction. This is where change begins. From now on, you install a mandatory pause. Not forever. Not dramatically. Just enough. When triggered, count to 10 before speaking. When emotional, sleep on the decision. When pressured, say, "I'll get back to you." Those words are not weakness. They are a declaration of control. You have a choice. Notice what happens when you do this consistently. People stop rushing you because it doesn't work. People stop provoking you because there's no reaction. Your presence slows the room down, and slow rooms favor disciplined minds. The pause does something else most people don't expect. It restores self-respect. When you stop reacting automatically, you stop apologizing later. You stop explaining yourself. You stop cleaning up emotional messes. You begin to trust yourself. And trust is built through restraint, not expression. That's the key. Most mistakes are not made because of bad judgment. They are made because judgment was never consulted. Emotion acted first. Impulse decided. The pause invites judgment back into the process. And judgment is what separates adults from children, leaders from followers, operators from reactors. You are not here to live reactively. You are here to operate deliberately. And that starts with one skill, the ability to pause. Without it, discipline collapses. Without it, control is an illusion. You have a choice. You've learned the foundation. If you cannot pause, you are not free. If you can pause, you can choose. If you can choose, you can control outcomes. Now it's time to go deeper, because pausing alone is not enough. You must understand why control is trainable. and why willpower is not the solution. Chapter 4. Impulse control is a trainable skill, not a personality trait. Most people believe control is something you're born with. They think some people are disciplined and others are not. They call it personality. That belief is convenient. And it's wrong. Impulse control is not a trait. It's a skill. That's the key. If it were personality, it wouldn't improve. If it were character, it wouldn't change under pressure. But it does. Every day, through training or the lack of it. You have a choice. Look closely at how people explain their behavior. That's just how I am. I'm an emotional person. I react fast. Those are not explanations. They are excuses. They remove responsibility. They end the conversation. They protect the habit. But habits are learned, and anything learned can be retrained. That's the key. Impulse control lives in the nervous system, not in identity. Your body reacts before your mind does. Heart rate increases. Breathing changes. Muscles tense. That reaction is automatic. The mistake is letting it decide your behavior. High control individuals don't eliminate reactions. They shorten the gap between reaction and regulation. They notice the surge. They don't obey it. You have a choice. Think about physical training. No one walks into a gym and lifts heavy on day one. Strength is built through repetition, progressive load, recovery. Mental discipline works the same way. You don't become controlled by deciding to be controlled. You become controlled by practicing restraint under low pressure. That's the key. Most people wait for high-stakes moments to test discipline. Arguments, confrontations, crisis. That's like trying to lift maximum weight without training. It fails. Discipline is built in small moments. Daily moments, boring moments. Waiting before responding to a message. Not interrupting. Not checking your phone compulsively. Not explaining unnecessarily. These are reps. And reps build control. Here's the problem most people don't see. Every time you react impulsively, you reinforce the neural pathway of reaction. Your brain learns, this is how we respond. Over time, reaction becomes default, effortless, automatic. But the opposite is also true. Every time you pause, every time you resist, every time you choose restraint, you weaken the impulse pathway and strengthen the control pathway. That's not philosophy. That's neuroscience. That's the key. This is why willpower fails. Willpower is temporary. It relies on motivation, and motivation is unstable. Training does not rely on motivation. It relies on systems. You don't need to feel strong to follow a system. You just need to execute. It's not about intensity. It's about consistency. You have a choice. Let's destroy another myth. Calm people are not naturally calm. They are practiced. They've failed before. They've reacted before. They've paid the price. And they learned. They trained themselves to slow down, to regulate, to choose. You are not behind. You are untrained. That's fixable. Now let's talk structure. If you want control, you need rules. Not flexible guidelines. Not emotional promises. Rules. Rules remove decision-making in heated moments. For example, I don't respond when angry. I don't make decisions at night. I don't explain myself emotionally. These rules are not restrictions. They are protections. They protect you from yourself. That's the key. Behavioral instruction. This matters. Starting today, you train impulse control deliberately. Step 1. Identify your common impulse moments. Anger, defensiveness, urgency, boredom. Step 2. Choose one restraint rule. Only one. For example, when triggered, I wait 5 minutes before responding. That's it. 5 minutes doesn't change your life, but it changes outcomes. You have a choice. During those 5 minutes, do nothing productive. Don't rehearse arguments. Don't justify yourself mentally. Just let the emotion peak and pass. Emotions burn hot and die fast. If you don't feed them with action, that's the key. You will fail at first. You will react sometimes. You will slip. That's not weakness. That's training. Progress is not perfection. Progress is fewer reactions over time, fewer apologies, fewer explanations, fewer messes to clean up, and more control. Notice something important. As impulse control increases, confidence increases quietly. Not loud confidence. Not performative confidence. Internal confidence. You stop fearing situations because you trust your response. You trust yourself to pause. You trust yourself to choose. That trust changes how you move through the world. Most people think discipline is rigid. It's not. Discipline is flexible because it's intentional. Reactive people are rigid. They respond the same way every time. Controlled people adapt. They choose responses based on outcomes, not emotions. That's the key. Over time, people will notice something. You don't rush. You don't panic. You don't get pulled into chaos. Your calm becomes predictable, and unpredictability disappears. This shifts dynamics. People respect you more. They test you less. They hesitate before provoking you. Not because you're intimidating, but because you're not reactive. Understand this clearly. Impulse control is not about being passive. It's about being precise. It's not about suppression. It's about selection. You feel everything. You act selectively. That's power. You have a choice. This chapter removes the final excuse. You are not just like this. You are trained like this. And now, you are retraining. You've learned that control is a skill. You've started building it. Next, you must learn how to handle emotions correctly, without letting them run your life, because emotions are not the enemy. Misuses. Chapter 5. Emotions are information, not instructions. Most people treat emotions like commands. They feel something and they obey it. That mistake runs their life. Emotions were never meant to instruct behavior. They were meant to deliver information. That's the key. An emotion tells you something is happening inside you. It does not tell you what to do about it. You have a choice, but only if you separate feeling from action. Let's be precise. Fear does not mean run. Anger does not mean attack. Sadness does not mean withdraw. Excitement does not mean commit. Those are interpretations, habits, conditioned responses. The emotion is the signal. The behavior is the decision. Most people confuse the two. And that confusion costs them control. Think of emotions like dashboard lights. A warning light doesn't tell you to smash the engine. It tells you to check what's happening. But impulsive people panic. They slam the brakes. They jerk the wheel. Controlled people observe. They don't ignore the signal. They don't obey it either. They assess. That's the key. Fear, for example, is often misused. Fear is information about risk, not certainty. But reactive people treat fear as truth. They avoid. They retreat. They delay. They let fear decide outcomes. Controlled people read fear differently. They ask, what exactly is the risk? What part is imagined? What part is real? Then they choose. You have a choice. Anger is even more misunderstood. Anger is information about boundaries being crossed or ego being threatened. But most anger is ego-based, not principle-based. Someone disrespects you, challenges you, disagrees publicly, anger flares. The impulse says, correct this now. Reassert dominance. Defend your image. And people react. But reacting to anger rarely restores respect. It usually signals instability. That's the key. Here's the hard truth. If anger truly meant action, every angry person would be powerful. They're not. They're exhausted. Anger that controls behavior, controls the person experiencing it. What angers you controls you. Say it again. What angers you controls you. Let's talk about excitement. Excitement feels positive, but it can be just as dangerous. Excitement rushes decisions. It ignores downside. It skips evaluation. People commit too fast, trust too quickly, spend too loosely. They say yes because it feels good. What feels good now often costs you later. That rule applies to positive emotions too. That's the key. Most emotional damage comes from one false belief. If I feel it strongly, I should act on it. That belief is never questioned. It's assumed, and it's wrong. Intensity does not equal accuracy. Urgency does not equal importance. Emotions amplify perception. They distort judgment, which is why action must wait. You have a choice. High-control individuals follow a different rule. They never make decisions at emotional peaks, not when angry, not when excited, not when afraid. They wait until the emotional wave passes. Why? Because emotions are temporary. Decisions are permanent. That's the key. This is where most people fail. They think delaying action means suppressing emotion. It doesn't. You are allowed to feel fully. You are not required to act immediately. You can acknowledge anger internally without expressing it externally. You can feel fear without retreating. You can feel excitement without committing. That separation is control. Behavioral instruction. Pay attention. When an emotion hits, label it. Say internally, this is anger. This is fear. This is excitement. Labeling creates distance. Distance creates control. Then ask one question. What is this emotion telling me without telling me what to do? That's the discipline. You have a choice. Next, delay action. Not forever. Just long enough for clarity. 10 minutes. 1 hour, 1 night. Most emotional urges lose power when ignored. If it's still important later, you can act then calmly. If it's not, you just saved yourself from damage. That's the key. Understand this. Emotional maturity is not emotional expression. It's emotional management. Children express. Adults regulate. Reactive adults are just children with authority. Controlled adults choose when and if to act. That distinction shapes careers, relationships, and leadership. People who respect you most are not those who see your emotions. They are those who trust your stability. They know you won't explode. They know you won't rush. They know you won't act impulsively. That predictability creates safety, and safety creates influence. Another uncomfortable truth. Most people overshare emotionally because they want relief. They want to feel lighter. They want validation. But emotional discharge trades short-term relief for long-term cost. You feel better for 5 minutes. You look weaker forever. What feels good now often costs you later. That's the key. Now let's reframe emotions correctly. Emotion is data. Data must be analyzed. You don't ignore data. You don't obey it blindly. You evaluate. You integrate. Then you decide. This turns emotions into assets instead of liabilities. Over time, something changes. You stop fearing your emotions because they no longer control you. You stop suppressing them because you trust your restraint. You become internally honest and externally disciplined. That combination is rare and powerful. You have a choice. You can keep letting emotions issue orders, or you can demote them to advisors. Advisors speak. Leaders decide. Be the leader. This chapter taught you how to interpret emotion correctly, not as instruction, as information. But interpretation alone is not enough, because the most powerful discipline is knowing when to say nothing at all. You've learned how to feel without acting. Now you must learn how silence multiplies control. Chapter 6. Silence is the most underrated form of discipline. Silence makes people uncomfortable. That's why it works. Most people speak to relieve tension. They speak to explain. They speak to defend. Controlled people stay silent to observe. That's the key. Silence is not the absence of strength. It is the presence of restraint. You have a choice. And silence is one of the strongest ones you can make. Understand this first. Every word you speak gives information. Every explanation reveals position. Every reaction reduces mystery. Silence keeps information inside. And information is leverage. When you speak impulsively, you give others material. When you stay silent, you force them to guess. That reverses power. Watch social dynamics carefully. The person who talks the most is usually the one seeking approval. The person who talks the least is usually the one being evaluated. Silence shifts roles. You are no longer performing. You are observing. That's the key. Most people fear silence because they fear judgment. They think silence means they lost. They think silence makes them look weak. They think silence signals uncertainty. In reality, silence signals control. Calm silence suggests confidence. Rushed speech suggests insecurity. People feel this instinctively, even if they can't explain it. Think about arguments. The person who keeps talking keeps exposing themselves. They escalate, they justify, they over-explain. The person who goes quiet lets the other person reveal everything. Anger becomes visible. Inconsistency appears. Emotion leaks out. Silence doesn't need to win. It just needs to wait. That's the key. Silence also protects you from mistakes. Most regret comes from words spoken too early, too emotionally, too permanently. Once spoken, words cannot be unsaid. Silence keeps options open. You have a choice. Let's talk about dominance quietly. True authority is calm. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't rush to respond. Loud people try to assert control. Quiet people already have it. Silence is how authority conserves energy. Here's a critical distinction. Silence is not avoidance. Silence is timing. Avoidance hides. Silence observes. Avoidance is fear-based. Silence is strategy-based. That's the key. Most people talk to feel safe. They explain to reduce anxiety. They answer immediately to appear competent. They fill space to avoid discomfort. But discomfort is not dangerous. It's informative. When you stay silent, you see how others handle the gap. Some get nervous. Some overshare. Some reveal intentions. Silence gives you data. Behavioral instruction. Listen carefully. From now on, adopt a default of silence. Not forever. Not socially awkward. Just slower. When asked a question, pause before answering. When challenged, breathe before responding. When criticized, say nothing at first. That pause is not emptiness. It's discipline. You have a choice. Silence also prevents escalation. Most conflicts grow because someone keeps feeding them. One comment leads to another, then damage. Silence starves conflict. If there's no fuel, fire dies. That's the key. Another truth people don't like. Explaining emotionally makes you look guilty, even when you're not. The more you explain, the more it sounds like justification. Silence communicates confidence. Confidence does not rush to clarify. Watch how powerful people speak. Short sentences, minimal words, no emotional leakage. They don't narrate their feelings. They don't broadcast frustration. They speak when it adds value. They stay silent when it doesn't. That's discipline. Over time, silence changes your presence. People listen more closely because you speak less. Your words carry weight because they are rare. Your reactions slow down. Your mistakes decrease. You stop apologizing for things you never should have said. You have a choice. Silence also strengthens internal control. When you resist the urge to speak, you reinforce restraint. That restraint spills into other areas. You eat less impulsively. You decide more carefully. You move more deliberately. Control compounds. Let's be clear. Silence is not passive. It's active restraint. It's choosing not to reveal, choosing not to react, choosing not to feed emotion. That choice builds authority. Most people will never master this. They will keep talking, keep reacting, keep exposing themselves. You won't. You're training discipline. You're learning when doing nothing is the most powerful move. That's the key. This chapter gave you a weapon that requires no effort and no explanation. Silence. But silence alone is not enough, because even silence can be broken by urgency. And urgency is the real enemy of precision. Chapter 7. Urgency is the enemy of precision. Urgency feels important. It feels decisive. It feels powerful. Most of the time, it's a lie. Urgency exists to rush you, to compress your thinking, to force action before clarity arrives. That's the key. The faster you're pushed to move, the less control you have. You have a choice. But urgency tries to take it away. Watch how mistakes happen. Not slowly, not thoughtfully. They happen fast. A rushed reply, a rushed decision, a rushed commitment. People don't usually regret what they did. They regret how fast they did it. What feels urgent now often costs you later. Say it again. What feels urgent now often costs you later. Urgency creates tunnel vision. When you feel rushed, your mind narrows. You stop seeing options. You stop considering consequences. You stop asking better questions. You move. And movement feels like progress, even when it's not. That's the trap. Here's a truth most people never internalize. Speed is not intelligence. Speed is not confidence. Speed is often fear wearing productivity clothing. People rush because they're uncomfortable waiting. They rush because silence feels risky. They rush because pressure feels personal. Controlled people don't rush. They let others feel uncomfortable. They let time work. They let information surface. That's the key. Look at how urgency is used against you. Answer now. Decide today. This won't last. You're running out of time. These phrases are not neutral. They are control tactics. They don't prove importance. They remove evaluation. If something is truly valuable, it survives scrutiny. If it collapses under delay, it was never solid. You have a choice. High-stakes environments expose this clearly. In crises, the calmest person leads, not the fastest. They slow the room down. They ask fewer questions, better questions. They don't let panic dictate action. Precision requires space. Urgency destroys space. That's the key. Most people think slowing down means falling behind. In reality, slowing down prevents backtracking. Rushed decisions create cleanup. Cleanup wastes time. Time lost to cleanup is invisible but massive. Calm decisions reduce error. Reduced error compounds advantage. Precision wins over time. Let's talk about impulse again. Urgency feeds impulse. Impulse loves urgency. Together, they bypass discipline. When something feels urgent, you skip the pause. You skip silence, you skip evaluation, and you act. That's why urgency is so dangerous. It disables everything you've learned so far. Behavioral instruction. This matters. When something feels urgent, do the opposite of what you feel. Slow down. Not dramatically. Not defiantly. Just enough. Ask 3 questions. What happens if I wait? Who benefits from me acting fast? What am I not seeing yet? Those questions break urgency's spell. You have a choice. Notice something important. Truly important decisions rarely require immediate action. They require accurate action. Health decisions, career decisions, relationship decisions. All are ruined by haste. All are improved by patience. That's the key. Urgency also exposes insecurity. People who rush often fear losing control. They fear missing out. They fear being judged. They fear losing position. So they move quickly to feel safe. But safety built on speed is fragile. Safety built on precision lasts. Watch how disciplined people handle pressure. They acknowledge it without absorbing it. They say, I understand the timeline. I'll respond shortly. I need time to review. Those statements are not resistance. They are boundaries. Boundaries preserve control. You don't need their permission to take time. You don't need their approval to think. You have a choice. Another truth most people avoid. Urgency makes you easier to manipulate. If someone can rush you, they can steer you. Sales pressure, emotional pressure, social pressure, all rely on speed. Slow people are hard to manipulate. Calm people are nearly impossible. That's the key. Over time, something shifts. You stop reacting to timelines that aren't yours. You stop absorbing panic that isn't justified. You stop equating speed with competence. Your pace becomes intentional. An intentional pace builds authority. People trust those who don't rush. Precision does not announce itself. It arrives quietly. In fewer mistakes, better outcomes, and sustained control. Urgency burns bright and dies fast. Precision compounds. Choose what compounds. You are not here to move fast. You are here to move correctly. You don't win by acting first. You win by acting right. That requires space. That requires calm. That requires discipline. You have a choice. You've learned how urgency destroys precision. You've learned how slowing down restores control. Now it's time to identify the hidden forces that still hijack you from the inside. Because your triggers are not random. They are signals. And whoever controls them controls you. Chapter 8. Your triggers reveal who controls you. You don't react randomly. You react predictably. And whatever triggers you has leverage over you. That's the key. People think triggers are accidents. They're not. They are patterns. Reliable, repeatable, exploitable. You have a choice. But triggers try to make it for you. A trigger is anything that bypasses your discipline. A tone, a word, a look, a situation. Suddenly, you're no longer choosing. You're responding. That loss of choice is not small. It's decisive. Because the moment you react, control shifts away from you. Look closely at your reactions. What makes you defensive? What makes you angry? What makes you rush to explain? Those are not flaws. They are signals. Signals pointing to something inside you that wants validation, safety, or dominance. That's the key. Most people never study their triggers. They blame others. They blame circumstances. They blame stress. But disciplined people do something different. They map their triggers. They notice patterns. They track situations. They identify repeats. Because once a trigger is named, it loses power. You have a choice. Triggers usually connect to ego, respect, status, competence, control. Someone questions your intelligence. You react. Someone challenges your authority. You react. Someone ignores you. You react. The reaction feels personal, but it's mechanical. That's the key. Here's the uncomfortable truth. If someone can trigger you, they can steer you. They can rush you. They can distract you. They can destabilize you. This is why emotional control is the foundation of power. Calm people are difficult to manipulate. Triggered people are easy. Most manipulation does not look aggressive. It looks casual. A comment, a joke, a subtle challenge. And if you react, the manipulator learns something valuable. They learn your button. Once learned, it will be pressed again. You have a choice. The goal is not to eliminate triggers overnight. The goal is to see them clearly. Because visibility creates distance. Distance creates choice. That's the key. Behavioral instruction. This matters. For the next week, observe your reactions without judgment. When you feel an emotional surge, ask, what just happened? What was said? What was threatened? Not externally, internally. You are collecting data. Write this down if needed. Trigger, emotion, impulse. Example, criticism, anger, defense. Ignore the story you tell yourself. Focus on the pattern. Patterns can be interrupted. You have a choice. Once a trigger is identified, you pre-decide your response. Not emotionally, logically. For example, when criticized, I pause. When ignored, I stay silent. When rushed, I slow down. These pre-decisions bypass emotion. That's the key. Another truth most people resist. You don't need to confront every trigger. You don't need to correct every slight. Reacting validates the trigger. Not reacting starves it. Over time, triggers weaken when they no longer produce reaction. Triggers also reveal unresolved attachments. The need to be right, the need to be liked, the need to be respected immediately. The stronger the attachment, the stronger the reaction. Discipline loosens attachments, and loosened attachments create freedom. Understand this clearly. Being untriggerable does not mean being passive. It means being unreachable. Reachable people are controlled. Unreachable people choose. That's the key. Most people spend their lives reacting and calling it personality. It's not personality. It's conditioning. And conditioning can be undone. You are doing that now. You have a choice. Over time, something powerful happens. People stop testing you because there's nothing to test. They stop pushing because there's no response. Your calm becomes boring to provoke. And boring to provoke is powerful. Triggers once controlled you. Now you see them. Seeing breaks the spell. But there's one final layer of discipline that most people misunderstand. Because sometimes the strongest move is not restraint. It's intentional inaction. Chapter 9. Discipline is doing nothing at the right time. Most people think discipline means action, effort, force, movement. They're wrong. True discipline is restraint. And sometimes the most disciplined move is doing nothing. That's the key. Doing nothing is not weakness. When it's intentional, you have a choice. And sometimes that choice is inaction. Most damage in life is not caused by bad action. It's caused by unnecessary action. Saying something that didn't need to be said. Responding when silence would have sufficed. Intervening when time would have solved it. People feel compelled to act because doing nothing feels irresponsible. But discipline is not about activity. It's about timing. Look at how conflict escalates. Someone reacts. The other reacts back. Then again. Each action feeds the next. Very few conflicts survive silence. No fuel. No fire. That's the key. Doing nothing requires confidence. Confidence that time will clarify. Confidence that silence will not reduce you. Confidence that you don't need to prove anything. Most people act because they doubt themselves. They act to reassure their ego. Controlled people don't need reassurance. They wait. Think about how power actually operates. Power doesn't rush. Power doesn't explain itself. Power doesn't chase resolution. Power waits for leverage. And leverage often appears only when you stop interfering. There are moments when action is necessary. This chapter is not about passivity. It's about precision, knowing when action adds value and when it subtracts it. That distinction separates operators from reactors. Here's the rule most people never learn. If acting does not improve your position, do nothing. Simple, uncomfortable, effective. You have a choice. Doing nothing gives you 3 advantages. First, clarity. When you stop acting, you start seeing. Second, control. You are no longer reacting to others' timing. Third, leverage. Others reveal more when you reveal less. That's the key. Most people fear doing nothing because they fear losing momentum. But momentum built on reaction is fragile. It collapses under pressure. Momentum built on restraint is stable. It compounds quietly. Look at negotiations again. The person who speaks last often wins. Why? Because they waited. They listened. They adjusted. They didn't rush to fill silence. Silence forced the other side to expose priorities. Doing nothing created advantage. Let's address impatience. Impatience is emotional discomfort, masquerading as productivity. You feel tension. You want resolution. So you act, but resolution achieved too. Early is often the wrong resolution. Waiting feels slow. Fixing mistakes later feels slower. That's the key. Behavioral instruction. This is critical. The next time you feel compelled to act, ask, does this action improve my position? Or just relieve my discomfort? If it only relieves discomfort, don't do it. Sit with the tension. That tension is training. You have a choice. Doing nothing strengthens discipline because it goes against impulse. Impulse wants movement. Discipline chooses restraint. Every time you choose inaction intentionally, you reinforce control. You teach your nervous system that discomfort is survivable. That lesson changes everything. Here's a hard truth. Many people ruin good situations by interfering. They overmanage. They overcommunicate. They overcorrect. They don't let things unfold. Discipline is trusting timing. Doing nothing also protects reputation. Silence avoids misinterpretation. Delay avoids missteps. Restraint avoids regret. Most apologies come from actions that never needed to happen. Understand this clearly. Doing nothing is not permanent. It's temporary restraint. You are waiting for the right moment, and the right moment is often obvious, but only if you haven't rushed past it. That's the key. People who master this seem calm under chaos. They are not frozen. They are selective. They act decisively because they didn't act impulsively. Their action carries weight. Because it's rare, you have a choice. You can keep reacting to discomfort, or you can let discomfort pass. You can keep interfering, or you can let leverage develop. One path feels active. The other builds power. Choose power. This chapter taught you restraint at the highest level. Not silence alone, not pause alone, but intentional inaction. Now there is only one final lesson, because all of this discipline leads to a single outcome. Calm, and calm decides everything. Chapter 10, the calmest person always wins. Calm is not a personality. Calm is a position, and in every environment, pressure, conflict, competition, the calmest person holds the advantage. That's the key. Not the loudest, not the fastest, not the most emotional, the calmest. You have a choice, and that choice decides outcomes. Most people misunderstand calm. They think calm means passive. They think calm means soft. They think calm means disengaged. It doesn't. Calm means unprovoked. Calm means unhurried. Calm means in control. Calm is not the absence of intensity. It is intensity under discipline. Look at any high-stakes situation, a negotiation, a crisis, a confrontation. The person who stays calm is the one thinking clearly. The person who thinks clearly sees options. The person who sees options controls direction. That's the chain. Calm, clarity, control. That's the key. Emotional people feel powerful in the moment. Calm people are powerful over time. Emotion burns fast. Calm compounds. Anger feels strong but fades. Panic feels urgent but collapses. Calm stays, and staying power wins. Most people chase dominance. They posture. They argue. They react. They think power is something you show. It's not. Power is something you hold, and calm is how you hold it. Think about influence. Who do you trust more? The person who explodes under pressure, or the person who stays steady? Who do you follow? The one who reacts, or the one who responds deliberately? Calm creates trust. Trust creates influence. That's the key. Calm also makes you unpredictable. Reactive people are easy to read. You know when they'll snap. You know when they'll defend. You know when they'll rush. Calm people break patterns. They don't respond the same way every time. They don't give emotional tells. And unpredictability increases leverage. Here's the truth most people never accept. Calm is trained, not inherited. No one is born unshakable. They become that way by practicing restraint. When it would be easier to react, you have done that work in this audiobook. Pause, silence, delay, inaction, awareness. All of it leads here. Calm is what remains when impulse no longer decides. Calm is what remains when urgency no longer rushes you. Calm is what remains when triggers no longer hook you. That's the key. Most people think calm means they don't care. In reality, calm means they care about outcomes more than expression. They don't need to vent. They don't need to prove. They don't need to win the moment. They're playing a longer game. Let's be clear. Calm does not mean you never act. It means when you act, it's clean. Few words, precise timing, no emotional residue. When calm people move, others feel it. Because it's rare. Behavioral instruction. This matters. From now on, calm is your baseline. Not because you suppress emotion, but because you don't let emotion drive. When things intensify, your goal is not to match energy. Your goal is to lower it. Slow your speech. Slow your movement. Slow your decisions. That slows the entire environment. You have a choice. Notice what happens when you do this consistently. People mirror you, or they expose themselves. Either way, you gain information. Calm makes others reveal intent. Agitation reveals insecurity. Overtalking reveals uncertainty. Rushing reveals fear. Calm sees all of it. Another truth people avoid. Calm is intimidating, not because it's aggressive, but because it can't be controlled. You can't rush calm. You can't provoke calm. You can't manipulate calm. That frustrates people who rely on emotional leverage, and frustration weakens them. Calm also protects you from regret. Most regret comes from emotional decisions. Words spoken too fast, actions taken too soon. Calm removes those moments. You stop apologizing. You stop explaining. You stop repairing damage. Life gets quieter and stronger. Understand this clearly. Calm is not the end goal. Calm is the operating system. From calm, you decide. From calm, you act. From calm, you lead. Without calm, every other skill collapses. That's the key. Most people live reactively and call it passion. You won't. You operate deliberately. You pause. You observe. You choose. That sequence is power. Now look back at what you've learned. Impulses are not harmless. Reactions give away leverage. Pausing creates freedom. Control is trainable. Emotions are information. Silence multiplies discipline. Urgency destroys precision. Triggers reveal control. Inaction builds leverage. All of it leads here. Calm. You have a choice. You can return to reacting, or you can stay disciplined. You can keep living at the mercy of emotion, or you can operate with intent. The challenge is simple and non-negotiable. The next time pressure rises, be the calmest person in the room. Not once, not occasionally. Every time, because the calmest person always wins. Every outcome in your life is preceded by a moment, and every moment is decided by how you respond or fail to respond. You now understand this truth. Your impulses are not random. They are trained, and anything trained can be retrained. You do not need louder confidence. You do not need more motivation. You need restraint, the ability to pause, the discipline to stay silent, the strength to act only when it matters. From this moment forward, do not react quickly. Do not explain emotionally. Do not move just because you feel pressure. Pause. Observe. Decide. Because the person who controls their impulses controls their future. The challenge is simple. The next time you feel the urge to react, do nothing, and notice who suddenly loses power. If this audiobook gave you clarity, don't let it end as entertainment. Turn it into discipline. From today forward, do not react fast. Do not explain emotionally. Do not act under pressure. Pause. Stay silent. Choose deliberately. If you want more training like this, long form, authority-driven, no motivation, no noise, subscribe now. This channel is not for comfort. It's for control. And one last instruction, commit it to memory. The next time you feel triggered, do nothing. That moment decides who you become.